and welcome to everyone who's joining us right now. We have League of Women Voter members and other guests joining us today from across the country. We know that many of our friends tuning in from Northern California are dealing with the fires and all the effects from them, and there are challenges across the country right now. So we are hoping that everyone is safe and well. And we thank you all for being here with us. I'm Giovanna Sardelli, Artistic Associate and Director of New Works for TheatreWorks Silicon Valley. TheatreWorks is working with members from the Native Ohlone tribe in the Bay Area so that we may accurately and respectfully acknowledge the indigenous lands upon which our office and our theater sit. I'm currently sheltering in the land of the Southern Paiute, commonly known as Las Vegas, Nevada. On behalf of all of us at TheatreWorks and the Women's Club of Palo Alto, I want to welcome you to our conversation with Laura Harrington. We're going to learn about Perfect 36, the musical she wrote with Mel Marvin, and we're going to hear some of the wonderful songs from the show, all in honor of the centennial of the 19th Amendment and today, Women's Equality Day. Women's Equality Day. Oh, won't that be nice when that's true? And when it's 365 days a year and not just one. I don't know about you, but I didn't even know we had this day. It's not one of the holidays listed in my planner over here, but I hope everyone enjoyed their civic holiday on the 3rd of the month. But yes, we do. We have a day. And yes, how far we have come on the journey to equality. Even as we know there's so much more work to be done to achieve true and inclusive equality, there is much to celebrate. So I hope you have a glass to raise for this day, our day, Women's Equality Day. And for those of you who don't know, TheatreWorks is dedicated to developing new plays and musicals. Our mission is to find those works, old and new, that celebrate the strength and resilience of the human spirit. So it's a natural fit that we share selections from a musical that tells the story of the fight for the final necessary vote to give women the right to vote. This event began to take shape when the composer Mel Marvin reached out to me a few weeks ago to let me know that the Women's Club of Palo Alto had plans in the works to host Laura, and he put me in touch with them. So you know how when even in this contained medium, someone's passion and energy can't be contained by the little box they're trapped in? Well, that is how I felt when I had a Zoom call with a few of the women from the Women's Club. They are the kind of ladies who get things done. And since they're our partner for this event, I want to introduce you to one of the phenomenal women who make up the club so that she can tell you more about it.
Thank you for that introduction, Giovanna. And greetings and welcome to you all across the country on this historic day. I'm Jen Wagstaff-Hinton, a proud member of the Women's Club of Palo Alto, class of 2020. Each year, the new class is tasked to do a project. And our class came together during the pandemic, and we quickly aligned on a project to celebrate the centennial of the 19th Amendment ratification. We wanted our project to be educational and fun, but more importantly, to inspire people to vote in 2020. Thanks to shelter-in-place rules, where most all events are virtual, we came across the Perfect 36 team at the virtual caucus of the League of Women Voters, who then connected us to TheatreWorks, and voila, here we are today. Now, briefly, the club was founded by 24 women in 1894, at a time when the fight for the vote was already 50 years underway. The club was incorporated in 1904, and in 2006, purchased its current property in the Professorville area of Palo Alto. By 1916, the eclectic Tudor Craftsman Clubhouse officially opened, costing just $11,000. And in 2015, the building was listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Club members were active drivers of votes for women in California, leading up to ratification of the 19th Amendment in November 1911, 9 years ahead of full ratification across the U.S. For more than a century, the club has engaged in community outreach and development work. It has survived and thrived through 2 world wars, 2 global pandemics, earthquakes, depressions, and recessions. Today, with over 200 members, the Women's Club of Palo Alto is one of the largest in the state. We continue to promote community outreach for those in need, all while pursuing the club goals of friendship, self-improvement, and community involvement. So, if you like what you hear and see today, please make a donation online, and please, please remember to vote in 2020. Thank you.
Jen, thank you for that. Do you see what I mean about the energy? I'm alone in my room, but I'm smiling at the screen like a crazy lady. All right, let's dive in, shall we? What is Perfect 36? I'm going to let the team behind the musical answer that question. They've created a video to give us all a little background, and we're going to share that one with you now. At least I hope we...
This. What if women couldn't vote in 2020?
Had it not been for a single vote changed from nay to yay in 1920, the history of women in politics would have been very different.
Ratification of the 19th Amendment came down to a single vote.
And it was cast by a 23-year-old from Nyota, Tennessee.
Perfect 36 is a theatrical event likely to feel like deja vu all over again.
We'll keep the reins of power. You know we're itching for a fight. And while we hold the reins of power, it's hard times, am I right?
This is not the time for manners. No, it's time for a fight. Grab your wrenches, grab your spatters, 'cause they're what we're gonna throw tonight.
Told by 40 singers, actors, and musicians, Perfect 36 celebrates the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, reshaping the arc of America's future.
The 72-year suffragist struggle to gain the right to vote for half the nation was a force to reckon with. Hundreds of women arrested in front of the White House, countless marches across the country.
How long do we have to wait? How many weeks and months and years? How many lifetimes will it take?
How many lies, how many bribes, how many broken bones?
How long do we have to wait?
The ratification of the 19th Amendment stalled at 35 states. And that brings us here to the Hermitage Hotel in Nashville, Tennessee, where the drama unfolded among a menagerie of legislators from all around the counties,
Heroic suffragist leaders from around the country,
anti-suffragist leaders, and high-profile business lobbyists.
We ain't gonna be, no, we ain't gonna be, no, we ain't gonna be no perfect. No perfect 36!
And in the heat of that southern summer, illegal whiskey flowed freely, Jim Crow racism flourished.
and the promise of a vote changed like the wind in an ironic scenario that gave men the power to make the decision about women's rights.
Just
about men.
Put your head on my chest.
I'm worried about many things.
Concentrate on the moonlight.
I'm worried about Democrats.
I'll take care of the rest.
And Republicans.
When it comes to romance,
Can't you see?
I'm one of the best.
What's bothering me?
In the sobriety of this hallowed chamber, the stakes could not have been higher as our fragile American democracy played out as the world watched.
So buzz now, ladies. Show 'em you ain't no more than dumb. Time to take that iron fist right out of that velvet glove.
It's this political vintage from which Perfect 36 is made.
It all comes down to this, right here, right now. We rise. Victory's in our sights, right here, right now. This day, this vote, right here, right now. We rise, we rise, we rise.
Oh, yes, does the heart good. We are joined by Laura Harrington. She is an award-winning playwright, lyricist, and librettist. Her plays, musicals, and operas have been produced in 28 states and internationally. She taught playwriting at MIT, and she's been a guest artist at Harvard, Wellesley, and other prestigious places. And her first novel, Alice Bliss, won the 2012 Massachusetts Book Award in Fiction. Playwrights Horizons in New York City commissioned the musical Alice Bliss, which we at TheatreWorks were slated to include in our annual New Works Festival that would have happened earlier this month. But alas, COVID forced us to reschedule. So we are holding out hope that the stars and schedules will align and that we'll be able to beginning of Perfect 36. Let's release her from wherever it is in the ether that you are holding her captive. Ah, Laura, I believe you've been released. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to speak with all of us. It's late where you are, right?
Yeah, it's 8:30. The sun set about an hour ago. It might even be 8:45, and I'm on the East Coast in Gloucester, Massachusetts.
I'm
So
glad you could
thank
be
you.
here with us.
Thank you, Gio. And thanks also to the Women's Club of Palo Alto and the whole team at TheatreWorks for inviting me to speak with you today. I'd love to begin our time together with a quote from Carrie Chapman Catt. As the leading character in the musical, Perfect 36, when it looks as if the 19th Amendment will not pass, Catt rallies the suffragists saying, "Words are all we have. They're all we've ever had to change men's minds." We all know the story of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, or we think we do. There's been a lot of coverage during this centennial year, which is very welcome. But for most of the last century, this moment in history was forgotten or ignored. Academic publishers are scrambling to get a paragraph or two into high school textbooks where there is rarely, and I mean almost never, a mention.
Isn't that the truth? All right, so please tell me, what are some of the things that we might not know?
Generations of women, Black, white, Latina, Asian, Native American, worked tirelessly on this issue.
Laura, let's name a few of those extraordinary women so that their names become as synonymous with the suffragist movement as Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
There's Sojourner Truth,
Mabel Pinghua Lee and Kamako Kimura.
Ida B. Wells, and Mary Church Terrell.
Zitkala Shah. That's a Lakota name, and I'm not 100% confident in my pronunciation.
And Milagros Benet de Mutin, to name only a few.
I have learned more about the suffragist movement from your musical the TheatreWorks Education Department, and Den Legaspi, our art director, than I did for my formal education. So, and I want to say, since I'm learning about some of these remarkable women for the first time, if we've mispronounced any of these names, please use the chat feature or email me through TheatreWorks to provide me with the correct pronunciation. As someone who has gone through life being called Giovanni, I know how important it is to call people by their proper name. Oh, also, please use that chat feature to tell us about other remarkable women who might not have been given their due. Okay, so the women that we've mentioned and so many others fought for the right to vote long before we get to August 1920.
That's right. It took 800 legislative campaigns over 72 years to bring the amendment to a vote. What began in the abolitionist movement of the 19th century fractured into two key and competing groups in the 20th century, led by Alice Paul and Carrie Chapman Catt. And while we all wish that the women of 1920, our heroes, might have been as inclusive as we intend to be, both leaders found it necessary to make painful compromises and at times turned their backs on fellow suffragists in order to bring the amendment to a vote. Today, after the neglect of nearly a century, the stories of all of the women who fought for the vote are coming to the fore. So let's go back to 1920 in August, when Delaware was supposed to be the 36th and final state to ratify. But Delaware voted no. And with time running out, states were refusing to vote at all.
How did it come down to Tennessee?
Governor Roberts of Tennessee, firmly prodded by President Wilson, finally called a special session. The Suffs needed to win in Tennessee or start all over again. And the odds of winning in Tennessee, a Southern conservative state, were long indeed.
Laura, can you set the historical scene for us?
Well, it was hotter than hell in Nashville that August 1920. Grumpy legislators called away from their farms and families arrived in the Capitol, bunking at the Hermitage Hotel across the street from the State House. Local and national press were out in force. Suffragists, anti-suffragists, and their leaders poured in from all over the country. Carrie Chapman Catt from her home in New York, and Josephine Clayton, leader of the anti-suffs, from her home nearby. Gardens throughout Nashville were stripped of their roses as suffs carried and distributed yellow roses and antis red. Lobbyists from every state of the Union converged in Nashville. The whiskey ring wanted prohibition repealed and viewed women as their natural enemy in this regard. The textile manufacturers, the railroad lobby, and more, each concerned that women, if they got the vote, would rewrite child labor laws and reform both working conditions and working hours, arrived with lots and lots of money to spend to sway the vote. There was something called the Hospitality Suite on the 8th floor of the Hermitage Hotel, hosted by the lobbyists and Jack Daniels, and it was open 24 hours a day. You needed a pass just to get onto the 8th floor. No women were allowed, and bootleg whiskey flowed night and day. Here's a little snippet of dialogue among the lobbyists in the Hospitality Suite. Right now, we know what the vote costs us. Figured pretty close. But who knows if women can be bought? Well, if they can, that's going to cost us. And if they can't be bought, that's going to cost us even more. In a shocking move, Seth Walker, Speaker of the House and a staunch suffrage supporter, turned tail and went over to the antis the night before the vote. Joe Hanover, the first Jew to serve in the Tennessee legislature, had left politics to return to his private law practice, but ran for office again and was reelected just so that he could fight for suffrage. Hanover and Walker had worked long hours together in the months leading up to the vote. Walker's 11th hour betrayal appeared to be the death blow to the Suff cause.
And that's historically accurate. Like, that's not drama created for a musical.
No, that's historically accurate. And so really kind of delicious to discover something like that in your research for a project like this. Votes were bought and sold in those final days leading up to the ratification vote. Sometimes votes were bought and sold several times over. Pro-suffrage legislators received telegrams telling them that a family member was ill or dying, and they were desperately needed at home. Suffs guarded the train station platforms to keep waffling legislators from leaving town. The suffragists themselves were slandered, mocked, and sometimes physically attacked. They were characterized as she-men, she-wolves, immoral, promiscuous. One legislator instructed another,
"You and I represent the mothers at home, tenderly rocking their babies in their cradles. We do not and never will represent the low-neck, high-skirt variety of women you see here."
That's what I thought. That was Steve Muterspa, and we're going to be seeing him again since I'm imagining the musical calls for multiple sexist men. So Carrie Chapman Catt was not exactly a low neck, high skirt kind of woman, was she?
not at all. She was a 65-year-old white-haired widow who had been fighting for suffrage for most of her life. Throughout her career, Catt was subjected to personal attacks, smear campaigns, ugly political cartooning, and death threats. And in Nashville, there were so many threats against her life, she was unable to leave her room at the Hermitage Hotel. What was at stake? The fundamental democratic right to have a voice. The night before the vote, Catt, who characterized Nashville as the ugliest fight of her life, told the Suffs, most of whom had not slept in days, that there was only one thing left to do: pray.
Wow. Can you tell us a bit about the song that Catt sings, Truth?
What do you do when you believe that everything you've worked for all your life is lost? How do you find the strength to go on? Elizabeth Ward Land, who theater goers at TheatreWorks know from Little Women when she played Marmee, has been our incredible Carrie Chapman Catt.
I've seen hard times, I've lost my peace of mind, but I've never lost a fight. I've been betrayed in this bitter long crusade, but I always knew it was right. I keep hearing my mother's voice and the echo of other voices too, each one saying, carry on, we've placed our trust in you. If I could tell the truth, if I could pray, eyes closed, dreaming of a better day. If I could tell the truth, if I could speak my mind, I'd say we're lost. We've lost. I've been working my whole life through, long days and longer nights, uncomplaining, always campaigning, carrying the torch of women's rights. I keep hearing my mother's voice and the echo of other voices too, each one saying, carry on, we've placed our trust in you. If I could tell the truth, if I could and the fixes, the endless train rides, the storms and the hatred, the vicious lies, and the mountain just keeps getting higher. I've been climbing my whole life through, and if I tell the truth, I have to ask, what more can I do? I keep hearing my mother's voice and the echo of other voices too. Carry on, carry on. Our trust, our hope resides in you.
Oh, yes. Carry on. Just beautiful. I really want to thank Mel Marvin, the composer, for introducing us and for putting me in contact with the Women's Club. He's head faculty composer of the Graduate Musical Theater Writing Program at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, and I've known him since I was a student at Tisch in the Graduate Acting Program. And he's always been so great about recommending his students to me and bringing me into the program to work on new musicals. He's had 6 shows on Broadway, and he has worked everywhere. But I think most people know him from How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which one of my favorites. So I just want to say to everyone, we have the creative team bios on our website. So please check those out, since I cannot begin to do either of you justice with brief introductions. All right, let us go back in time, because I want to hear more about what Carrie Chapman Catt was up against.
Well, to give you an idea of what this all sounded like in 1920 and the kind of language that was used, here's one of the legislators casting his vote in the musical. This text is taken verbatim from the debates leading up to the vote.
I do not believe the good women of Tennessee want the ballot. But even if they did, the question which we legislators must decide cannot be determined by what women want, but by what they ought to have. Now, Eve wanted to eat the apple. But because of that disobedience, God placed woman in the home with her husband to rule over her. Now, if any are disposed to find fault with this position, they are disposed to complain of the will of God Almighty and not the will of man. And that is exactly what Mrs. Catt and the leaders of woman suffrage are doing. I vote nay.
Okay, wow.
The amendment was passed by the slimmest margin possible, a single vote. Harry Byrne, the youngest legislator at 24, had been wearing the red roses of the antis and had voted twice to table the amendment, which would have killed it. But when he arrived in the chamber that August morning, he had a letter in his pocket.
Dear son, hurrah and vote for suffrage. Don't keep them in doubt. I noticed some of the speeches against. They were bitter. I have been waiting to see how you stand and have not noticed anything yet. Don't forget to be a good boy and help Mrs. Catt put the rat in ratification. Your mother.
Harry Byrne changed his vote and the course of history. For his efforts, he was chased out of the House chamber and escaped onto the roof in fear for his life.
So, Laura, what's your relationship to this story?
Well, in 1995, I was at the Bunting Institute writing about Joan of Arc, and I got a call from the artistic director of Tennessee Rep. Matt Perkel had a project he wanted to talk to me about, and he wanted to travel to Cambridge to meet me. I've worked all over the country in theaters large and small, and no artistic director had ever wanted to meet me before deciding if we should work together or not. Mac wanted to commission a musical about the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which would be the cultural centerpiece of Tennessee's 200th birthday celebration in May of 1996. To give you an idea of how Tennessee likes to celebrate, for their 100th, they built a replica of the Parthenon.
Oh, that.
Just that. Mac wanted a team of women to write the show, book, lyrics, and music. I wanted to write both the book and the lyrics. And when he told me our timeline, less than 1 year to opening night, I knew I needed a composer I trusted and with whom I could work quickly. So I asked for Mel Marvin. We had just spent a great year together collaborating on Joan of Arc. Mac agreed to my request and then set out to hire all female designers, lights, costumes, and set. I was quickly learning that Mac Perkle was one of the highest integrity individuals I would ever have the good fortune to work with, and that when it came to this story, he was a man with a mission. Mac had been raised and educated in the state of Tennessee, elementary school, high school, and college, and had never heard about Tennessee's role, never heard about it, in passing the 19th Amendment, never known of the heroic men and women who dedicated their lives to this cause. Just have to think about that for a minute. When he was 30 years old and running a theater, his high school librarian pulled him aside at an event and said, "Mac, I've got a story for you." That was the spark that became Perfect 36.
So when did you start working on the musical? Like how did it all begin?
Well, it really began in the Tennessee archives where I was learning about the events and the principal players. We knew we'd be performing at the Tennessee Performing Arts Center in Nashville, a theater with 2,500 seats and a 52-foot proscenium arch, which is about as big as it gets. It was a big cast, though, and a big story. I wrote furiously throughout that entire summer, and then we had a table read of the first draft in Nashville in late September. Actors read the script while Mel Marvin sang the 6 or 7 songs we had completed. But at our meeting immediately following the read-through, I had to tell Mac and Mel that we needed to scrap what we had and start over. Now, let me tell you, an admission like this can only occur in an atmosphere of trust, and it would not have been remotely surprising if Mac, who is now our producer and director, had fired me. If the size of the task and the time frame was daunting in June, starting over in late September for an opening night in May looked nearly impossible. But we had learned something critically important. The earnest, hardworking suffs were boring. The antis and all those misbehaving legislators and lobbyists were having all the fun.
Isn't that always the way? There is a really great song that captures this. Can you give us some context for that?
Well, Power is that song. And if you would please imagine that we're in that hospitality suite at the Hermitage Hotel, men only, Jack Daniels flowing night and day, for a black tie celebration and award ceremony. Seth Walker, Speaker of the House, who deserted the Suffs and came over to the Antis, is presented here with a cash award, and his new job as Vice President of the Birmingham and Nashville Railroad is announced. For the legislators and lobbyists in the room, Walker's defection is the death blow to the suffragist cause, and victory is so close they can taste it.
In rooms where we hide, in rooms where we lie to women, in rooms where we smoke, in rooms where we joke about women, in rooms where we trade, in rooms where we strayed with women. We love the power, we love the power, we love the way we play the game. We love the power, we love the power, and we love to fan the flame. We love the headlines, we love the moonshine, we love to strut our stuff. We curry favors from rant and ravers. Enough is never just enough. When we take the reins of power, you know the future's looking bright. 'Cause when we take the reins of power, it's hot times, am I right? We love the power and the slippery bottom line. We love the power and we know we're doing fine, doing fine. In rooms where we meet, in rooms where we cheat with women. We love the power. In rooms where we fake, in rooms where we wake with women. We love the power. In rooms where we rule, in rooms where we fool with women. We play to win and we will keep the reins of power. You know we're itching for a fight. And while we hold the reins of power, it's hot times, am I right? We love the power and the slippery bottom line. We love the power and we know we're doing fine, doing fine. To see someone run, to see someone cower, is so much fun. When you're in power, this is America's finest hour. Victory must be won. So ladies, here we go.
Laura, what was it like to write lyrics for that song?
Well, it took me a little while, and it was challenging to get into that mindset and pretty unsettling to give voice to men reveling in their power. But listening to the song and watching 25 men sing this song is both scary and exciting when we're seeing it in a performance.
Yeah. The lyrics, what is that one? In rooms where we hide? What is?
Yeah, in rooms where we hide, in rooms where we lied to women, in rooms where we smoke, in rooms where we joke about women, in rooms where we trade, in rooms where we strayed with women. We love the power. That is not my personal lived experience.
Well, thank goodness that's not true anymore. And if it is, grab that drink. Remember how I told you to have one?
Yes, ma'am.
So, all right. So you decided to go forward.
Yes, even though the task looked monumental and we really had no idea if it was even possible. So the three of us moved into a conference room at the Hermitage Hotel where all the drama had occurred with great big sheets of newsprint. We vowed not to leave that room until we had storyboarded the entire show from opening number to finale. It took 3 days to outline every scene, song, and character arc. We knew who was where, what they were doing, and how each scene built our story and led to a song. We were able to salvage most of the characters from the original draft, but discovering humor, a musical is an entertainment first and foremost, allowed us to build a new and better show.
Wow. But time was running out now, right?
Really faster than you can imagine. In January of '96, we reconvened in Nashville with a completed script and half the songs finished. While Mac rehearsed actors and the actors learned the music we'd finished for our first read through, Mel and I had a punch list of songs to write. There were 8 numbers on that list, almost half the show. And somehow we were knocking them off one by one, often more than one a day. The sets and costumes were being designed and built while we were still writing. Rehearsals began the 1st of April. The orchestrator and copyist were working around the clock to get the score ready. Opening night was a very special kind of thrill as we all raced to the finish line.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but how was it received?
The audiences were great. The reviews were great, including Variety, which gave us national exposure. And then we were invited to present the show in New York City that September at the National Alliance of Music Theater, the annual meeting of all regional theaters who produce musicals.
I was so sorry to miss that because I heard it was fantastic.
Well, it couldn't have gone better. Over and over, we heard it's the best show I've ever seen at this conference. But no one was stepping up to produce Perfect 36. Too big, we heard. 45 characters. Are you kidding? A 65-year-old female lead? Unheard of. Then a Broadway producer in a pinstripe suit leaned in close enough for a kiss, put his hand on my arm, and asked, "Why would anyone be interested in this story?" Dismissing me and the show in 8 words, which boiled down to, who cares?
What? I mean, we live in an industry where we're criticized all the time, but what happens to a musical when someone says that? When a powerful man says that?
Perfect 36 sat on our shelves for the next 20 years. We forget how common and easy it was to dismiss women's stories and women's history not that long ago.
Oof.
But in 2016, I realized that the 100th anniversary of the vote was only 4 years away. I called Mac and Mel, suggested we have a reunion with our cast in Nashville, take a look at our bootleg video, and then have a discussion about whether we should try to do a reading maybe, or a little reenactment of the vote for the centenary. I thought it might take a weekend, a couple of days of rehearsal, no big deal. So we gathered at Mac's house to share a meal with our cast, watched the video, and saw the show was not perfect. Of course, no show is, but it was astonishingly good and shockingly relevant.
Yeah.
The question, who cares, had been wiped out by Hillary Clinton's presidential run. Over the next few years, Harvey Weinstein, the Me Too movement, Clinton's loss, and Kavanaugh's confirmation created a very different climate for a story of women working against the odds to have a voice and a vote and a say in their government. Since then, we've revised and reimagined the show. The heart of the musical remains the same, but it's now clearly in the 21st century. We had a first reading of our new material in Nashville in the ballroom of the Hermitage Hotel, which went so well, we followed up with a reading in New York. It's always scary to bring a show to New York. I find them the toughest audience in the world, but I saw something in New York I never expected to see. Not only were people engaged and energized, they were deeply, deeply moved. There were tears and cheers and laughs and a standing ovation, which I have never experienced at a workshop. Suddenly, this story of scrappy women and men fighting against corruption and for a voice was not only relevant, but unexpectedly emotional.
Oh, yeah. There's a song that opens Act 2 that I find especially affecting and moving. Can you tell us about that one?
Well, when I was thinking about this moment in the show, I already had the director's vision in my head. I was asking myself what voting is all about, and I kept coming up with the phrase, it's about having a voice and being heard. But how do you express that without writing a lecture or an essay? I decided to try to write a song about how a woman's voice is part of our lives from the moment we're born to the moment we die, and to let all the other ideas fall from that via inference. It's called A Woman's Voice, and I hope it lives up to what one of my heroes, Yip Harburg, said about the power of song. Yip said, music can make you feel a feeling, words can make you think a thought, but a song can make you feel a thought. So I'd like you to picture a half-moon runway extending beyond the proscenium arch into the audience. In silence, 25 women file on stage and fill that half moon. They have taken off their jackets, and in their dresses, the suffs and antis are indistinguishable. We can no longer tell which side they are on. Behind them on either side of the stage are 2 men wearing tuxedos, carrying red silk sashes. As the song progresses, the women are gagged one by one until at the end, the last woman is cut off mid-phrase. The women stand before us, red slashes across their mouths, and then in silence, file off stage.
A woman's voice welcomed you into the world. A woman's voice sang you to sleep. A woman's voice guided your growing, gave you glowing memories to keep. A woman's voice has held your secrets. A woman's voice has shared her own. A woman's voice gave you a start, captured your heart when you were alone. Do you now seek to break these bonds? Do you seek to betray this trust? Do you now seek to still this voice which shaped your world? A woman's voice raised your children. A woman's voice taught them at home. A woman's voice guided their growing, always knowing children will roam. A woman bears sons to join armies, stripping the tree from the bough. And now she must ask yet again, ask of her men, who will fight for us now? Do you seek to betray that trust? Do you now seek to break these bonds? Do you now seek to still this voice which shaped your world? A woman's voice bids you good morning. A woman's voice says fare thee well. A woman's arms have and caressed you and blessed you 'neath wedding bells. A woman can always provide you the strength you need in your life. Her voice will never divide you. She's buried beside you, your loving wife.
Do you now seek to break these bonds? Do you seek to betray this trust? Do you now seek to still this voice which shaped your world?
Ooh, I felt that thought. I'm having so many feelings right now. It is such a powerful, effective song. And that image. Whew. So, yes, we do indeed have farther to go, but look how far we've come.
Today, as we celebrate the centennial of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, may we heed the call to action as it echoes across a century and work to get out the vote. As Carrie Chapman Catt said,
"The vote is the emblem of your equality, women of America, the guarantee of your liberty. That vote of yours has cost millions of dollars and the lives of thousands of women. Women have suffered agony you never can comprehend, that you and your daughters might inherit political freedom. That vote has been costly. Prize it."
That was actress Louisa Sermel. And earlier I didn't mention Marissa Kelty, who played the mother, who played the key role in getting us the vote. So we have one more song to share with you, and shortly after that, our Q&A will begin. So please type any questions you have in the chat section. But also, please remember that we are makers of theater and not historians. We're going to do our best to answer what you throw our way, but you should know that. So let us please play our final song, We Rise.
My name is Harriet Tubman, born a slave in 1822, died free. I've worked and I've waited, I've done what was given me to do, in my time, in my way. step by step, day by day, willing to work, willing to wait, willing to stand up for women, knowing that our time will come. Every great dream begins with a dreamer.
My name is Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Born in 1815, abolitionist, suffragist, fought for liberty. I've worked and I've waited. I've done what was given me to do. Lit a fire, paved the way, step by step, day by day. Willing to work, willing to wait, willing to stand up for women, knowing that our time will come. Don't try and tell me I'm only a woman. My name is Susan B. Anthony, born in 1820. Suffragist, abolitionist, led the battle for women's rights. Black and white, always fighting to be free. I've worked and I've waited. I've done what was given me to do. Broke the law, crossed the line, and refused to pay the fine. Willing to work, willing to wait, willing to stand up for women, knowing that our time will come. Men their rights and nothing more. Women their rights and nothing less. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Can you feel it? Can you see it? Can you hear it even now? We rise. Can you dream it? Can you dare it? Can you dare it even now? We rise. We are rising with the wind. We are lifted to the sky, higher than we've ever been. We rise. We rise. Every great dream begins with a dreamer.
What a fantastic song. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you,
I-
Gio.
I can't help thinking that all those women were fighting for our right to vote during the 1919 pandemic. And since we'll be voting in the midst of this pandemic, perhaps we can draw strength and courage from those who risked their lives to secure the right to vote. So thank you for reminding us of that. So we're going to close out this portion of our presentation. We're going to close it out with a video. And when that ends, we'll have received your questions, we hope. So put them in the chat. And we can spend a few more moments with Laura. So I'm going to hope you stay tuned for that. Thank you for supporting TheatreWorks, the Woman's Club, and Perfect 36. Your donations mean the world to us. Right now, you are the life's blood of our organizations and our art. And we are so grateful for any contribution you make through our respective websites. So enjoy this short video. And I'm going to see you on, we're both, Laura's sticking around. We're going to see you on the other side.
The vote is the emblem of your equality, women of America, the guarantee of your liberty. That vote of yours has cost millions of dollars and the lives of thousands of women, women of...
Hi there. Okay. I heard we have a little technical difficulty, but so since we're back, I'm going to start one of the questions now, Laura, that someone
Sure.
asked the other time, which is, why did the Suffs wear white? What, I never understood that.
Well, they were trying to push back against the things that were being said about them, that they were ugly, that they were unattractive, that they were she-men and she-wolves. So they very smartly decided all to dress the same in white and to wear dresses in order to counteract a lot of the criticism that had been leveled at them and the nasty, very nasty things that were said about them. So they were trying to say, no, we're really your sisters and your moms and your aunts and your daughters. We're not somebody else who might be threatening to you. So they were careful about crafting that image.
Very smart. Very smart.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I wanted to know. And I believe we have addressed any technical difficulty we had. So we're going to play you our video.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, gonna build a brand new world.
100 years ago, the 19th Amendment giving white women the right to vote was ratified.
In 1965, the Voting Rights Act was signed into law, outlawing discriminatory voting practices and ensuring that women of color were also given the right to vote.
Today, women serve in almost all capacities of our government.
We have a lineage from Jeanette Rankin to
Shirley Chisholm,
Sandra Day O'Connor, Ruth Bader Ginsburg,
Condoleezza Rice, Geraldine Ferraro, and Hillary Clinton, to name only a few.
And on August 11th, 2020, Kamala Harris became the first woman of color to ever be selected as vice presidential candidate for a major party.
This has been a hard-fought journey towards racial and social justice and a more just future. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and from that vantage point, we can clearly see that the time has come to climb down and get to work.
Get out the vote.
Get out the vote.
Get out the vote.
Yes, get out the vote. Yes. Great. All right. So we have a few questions. Thank you for sending those. One was, what is your dream? Since everything begins with a dreamer, what is your dream for the future of this musical?
Well, our dream is the same as it's always been, which is to see it on stage. But I have to say that with COVID causing the cancellation of the production and the chance to rethink and imagine using the work to get out the vote, at the moment, that seems pretty darn great to be working on that. But of course, you know, down the road, let's hope we have a chance to see this show on its feet again.
Yeah. It's quite incredible that you opened up your beautiful videos for us, for people to share. That's really unheard of. And I think it's inspiring that putting the need to vote, the responsibility to vote before the possibility of production is really quite special.
I think we take Michelle Obama telling us that we need to vote like our lives depend on it pretty seriously.
Yeah.
And anything we can contribute seems like where we'd want to be spending our time and our energy.
Yes, hear, hear. This was a question from Janice Brousseau, which is, okay, was there a story or a moment in history that you learned about in the development of this musical that made you stop and go, whoa? I love that question.
That's a really good question. You know, I think the one that maybe didn't make me stop, but as a writer, it really excited me, was that Seth Walker left the suffragists and went over to the antis, and then left politics very shortly thereafter, and then became a vice president of one of the railroads.
Yeah.
And no one had put in the connecting tissue between those things. But in the musical, we make the supposition that there was cause and effect in those events, which I think that I'm not the only person to have thought that in the research and subsequent years, but that was a really, really fun moment to find our bad guy, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to talk about corruption, and to see the impact of money in politics. And of course, nothing like that is happening now, but it sure was. It sure was happening then, and it was an incredible free for all, and it was just terrific to be able to put those put flesh on the bones of that story.
Yeah. I love the simplicity. I have to say, on a positive woe, was the note from a mother, like reminding these men that they were giving voice to people who didn't have it. And that when we vote, it is not actually supposed to be a selfish act. The voting is actually supposed to make people's lives better. And I just love how that is captured with a note from a mother in your musical.
Yeah. Well, you can't make that up, right? That Harry Byrne, the youngest senator, is a staunch anti-suffragist and hears from his mom. And I think the other thing that's so critical to remember about this story, and of course, it's like, are you kidding? That all came down to one vote? Well, but that has happened over and over and over again in our lives, in our history, in our legislation. I mean, think of John McCain and the Affordable Care Act. This is not unusual, that it comes down to a single vote. So it reminds us, you've got to stand up, you've got to show up, you've got to cast your vote.
Yes. Okay. You may not know the answer to this, but I'm curious also. So people are wondering, do you have any idea of like what percentage of the Suffs were married or single or average age, or is there anything about them?
I can't give you numbers, but the Suffs were everyone. They were married, they were single, they were moms, they were grandmothers, they were they were sisters, they were aunts, they were very young and quite old. Many people who worked for the cause worked for decades. Many people who worked for the cause also gave everything they had to it, including their jewelry. There were moments when they were raising money and women gave their jewelry if they had jewelry to give. So it was about as ecumenical as it could be in terms of who was part of this. And of course, the energy of younger Suffs was critical to the movement continuing, as well as some of the wisdom and lessons that the older Suffs had learned during the fight. Carrie Chapman Catt, who is credited by some people prefer to think that she had less power than she did, but her organizational skill of creating blocks of women in every single state, which then became the League of Women Voters as soon as the vote occurred, is really an extraordinary kind of political organizing, that she was able to pull women together to work state by state, county by county. And I'm not sure she always gets the credit she should for that level of organizing.
I'm fascinated by all the things that started with the Suffs, like just marching on Washington. Right. I didn't realize that was the first time. How unseemly! How unseemly, ladies. That's well,
fantastic. And while there were 5,000 women marching in that moment, in that day, in that parade, there were something like 100,000 men lining the route. And during that march, what began quietly and peacefully became more and more violent as they were shouted at and threatened, and several women went to the hospital because they were attacked. So we have this image of the peacefulness of these women in white dresses marching down the avenue, but we rarely hear the story of just how tough and rough it got for them.
Yeah, those are the photographs. I mean, we use it too, just that orderly line of women walking. It looks so civilized, and we forget that it's whenever people think that to give somebody something means they're going to lose something, we are confronted with ugliness.
Yep.
I'm also amazed when I think about 1965 and the Voting Rights Act, that that the tactics that were used, the violence, and because we could see the violence, I think that those images are haunting. Those images inspired people to move. Like today, people are passionate. People, you can't hide from the truth right now. You can see the truth. And so it's really interesting. But I think about when you talked about the suffs dressing up so that to dispel what people were saying. And, you look at the pictures in 1965 and people are dressed when they came to hear I Have a Dream, dressed beautifully.
Yep.
And that extends to everything. I mean, whenever a woman is attacked, the question of what were you wearing, as though
always.
That one is being put to rest. Let us hope. There was, I'm going to put a question to our chat and we have the answer. So never fear if you do not, but I'm curious, how many of you know what the symbol of victory for the suffragists was? I'm going to wait and we'll see. We've got a red rose, a yellow sunflower, white rose, yellow rose. Which of those was it? And I'm going to put another one out there to see if people know. What was the first state to approve votes for women? Do you know the answer to that? As I told you I wouldn't put you on the spot. Do you know what it is?
Laura, me?
Yeah, Laura, sorry.
Okay, this is a guess. This is a guess. Oh, good.
Denise
maybe
yellow
Denise
rose.
Maybe Denise can tell us which state too. It's a Western state, isn't it?
We got with the right answers in there. It is Wyoming. Oh, it is Wyoming.
Awesome.
It gave the right for women to vote in 1869.
Yeah, pretty
1869 Wyoming. But now, sorry to have to do this to you, state, but what was the last state to ratify the 19th Amendment in the US? Who knows the answer? And bonus points if you can tell, if you know the year. And we'll while people are answering that, I just assumed it was kind of all wrapped up, nice and neat. 1920, we got the right to vote. So there's that. But in fact, that's not the case. Has anyone answered yet? Because I'm good. All right. Whoever guessed Mississippi is correct. And our very own Chris Fitzer from TheatreWorks that man knows everything. He is our props master. He is a set designer and all around knowledgeable man. And I just want to say now, Mississippi, I do love you and I love your food, but it took you until 1984 to get on the bandwagon. So come on now. That's amazing. I had no idea that a state had not given women the right to vote in 1984. All right. I believe that we have covered most of what's in the chat. This conversation is continuing, everyone. It is continuing from now until Election Day and beyond. So this is all that we have time for now, but I look forward to getting back into theaters. And I look forward to seeing your whole musical. Laura, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Gio, and everyone behind the scenes who made this possible.
We also want to thank the Women's Club of Palo Alto again for partnering with us for this presentation. Please do check out our websites. And although the fight for the 19th Amendment gave white women the right to vote, it is important for us to acknowledge that this did not include women of color. To honor the efforts of those who have too often been left out of the story, our education department has compiled a collection of articles and resources that we hope you will take the time to read. And you can find those resources on our website. I know that I was on a huge learning curve this week, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So please do check out that website. Thank you to Jeffrey Lowe. He's TheatreWorks casting director and my partner in putting this entire event together. Thank you to my sister, Pietra Sardelli, who calls me the freeloader, and I'm sure she does that in a loving way since I'm staying in her home, and today she was my tech support. So thank you, Pietra. And not only is Stephen Muterspa a terrific actor, he is the company and operations manager for TheatreWorks. And now he's our manager and producer of online content, and he's been making all the magic happen backstage. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please stay healthy and strong. Together, we will indeed rise. Thank you, and be sure to vote.
Half the nation stands with you, the women of Tennessee. Half the nation watch and wait with you, the fighting women of Tennessee. We have all left the safety of a private life, the refuge of mothers and wives. We have risked our reputations, our